All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of More Than Chaos. We are here today in a cold central Illinois, and I've got my friend Lisa here today. Hey, Lisa. How you doing?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So good. And I know you're a podcast listener,
I am.
and this is
Big
a
fan.
podcast opportunity.
I know,
So
first opportunity.
this is great. And Lisa brought in some, for all of you watching on the YouTube, brought in some Evolution soda for
Bring in
us.
some
Is it soda?
probiotics. Yeah,
It
it's
is
like
soda.
healthy
Okay.
soda.
It's healthy soda. So
So,
want to give a shout out to Evolution. Thanks for sponsoring the podcast today. And what we're doing today is we're talking about rest. So something that as parents, maybe we all struggle a little bit with. I don't know. I do.
definitely.
maybe
I'm
you
no
do
expert
too.
on this, so was very humbling when this was your topic that you chose me for.
Yeah,
But you
no,
know
it's going to
what?
be good. You know what?
I'm here for it.
As we do these things, it's like, okay, life is chaotic as a parent of a
Right.
junior higher, and we want to try to say what is more than that. You know, there's
Right.
more than the chaos. So
Yes.
when it comes to rest, I don't look for experts. You know, I told you this. I want real people that are going
Right.
through it in the trenches. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about you. You have a junior higher. You have younger too, but
Right.
tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I live here in Normal, and I have a seventh grader who is an active boy, and I also have a fifth grade daughter who's also very active, and a third grade daughter.
Okay.
So life is very full. There's a lot of things to go to. Often feel like an Uber driver, but also like loving this stage. I feel like
Mm.
sometimes moments in the cars with him are my favorite.
Okay.
So, but it is like a very tight schedule. Sometimes I'm like writing things down and it is a full evening.
And so tight schedule, rest. Those things
Mm.
don't
Right.
always flow together. And
Right.
I think the hard part with rest is that every single person that's listening to this, unless they have figured out exactly what a good rhythm of rest looks like, is going to say, yeah, I understand exactly what you just said. You know, I feel like an Uber driver sometimes. You know, I
Right.
feel like somebody who's just bouncing around trying to take everybody everywhere. So
Mhm.
I guess the thing I want to kind of hit on today is why do you feel like, Lisa, why do you feel like rest for a parent of a junior higher matters? Like, why should we look to fill that in our schedule? Why should we calendar that? Why should we talk to our
Mhm.
spouses about the need for that? Why should we talk to our kids about the need for that?
Right.
Like, why do you think that that's an important aspect of who we are?
Well, I feel like personally, without rest, I am definitely not showing up as my like highest self, the best
Mm.
mom. I am feeling like stressed, or there's like a lot of chaos going on, and then I'm probably going to like react instead of like respond to things. So I feel like rest, we just need it so much so that we can just like calm our nervous systems down, be present. I think that's something as my kids are getting older, I'm becoming even more mindful of is like, yes, I'm like physically there, but am I like truly present with them? And I feel like if I don't have rest or don't have those things built in, that's really hard then to show
Mm.
up in those ways. And I think that that's what they need
Yeah,
from me. So,
that's good. You said the way that you react, the way that you respond,
right.
sometimes can be driven by a lack of rest,
Right.
right? Like, I feel that.
Yeah.
Had a lot of conversations with my wife about that. Like, why did you respond that way? It's because I'm not healthy right now.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not emotionally, spiritually healthy because I'm not taking time for myself.
Mhm.
We have this, for some reason, like, she just started saying, I think you're spiraling. Like, and I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that's a common, like, I think that's pretty common, but that is exactly
Right.
what I'll do. So just the other night, I was spiraling, Lisa, and it was 10 o'clock at night. I was tired. I
Mhm.
needed rest. And like everybody was doing
Right.
but we got Landon this silent basketball
Yes.
that's not really
Yes.
silent
Yes.
fully, you know, and he's just
Also
dribbling.
have one. Mhm.
Ryland's doing stuff, and I just look at Ann, and if you're watching online, you can see this. I just go like that. She's like, "You're spiraling." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Yes, I'm spiraling
Mhm.
right now." And I looked at my day, and I realized it was my first day back in the office,
Mm.
and I realized I did not have a rhythm of rest at all, like leading into that day, or
Right.
that day as a total. So by the end of it, I was done. You know,
Mhm.
so what would you say to parents that kind of deal with that? It's end of night, hard day, long day at
Right.
work, State Farm stacking up onto you, like homeschool, like all kinds of stuff, all kinds of things hitting you. And then at the end of the night, you're just done. You're spiraling.
Yeah.
You're out. What would be your encouragement to some of those parents that are listening right now, including me, by the way? I'm listening right now to what you have to say. So,
Well, I think something that I've even told my kids before is which kind of corresponds with the spiraling, is like window of tolerance. Like, guys, I'm about to leave my window of tolerance. Like, basically, they know the storm is brewing, and yeah, I'm probably not going to respond to them with just patience and grace and kindness. Like, mom is done. So, kind of giving them like fair warning. I feel like nighttime is also like the hardest for us, because I feel like we are done by the end of the day, and they're, it takes them forever to do anything, and they're still revved up, or they want to share, and it's like we're ready to like wind down. So I think that can be like a challenge.
Yeah. Window of tolerance. There's a book called Try Softer.
That would be where I got it
That's
from.
where you got it.
Yes,
That's where that's the first time I saw it.
yes.
Yeah. Audrey, is that her name? Audrey something?
Yes.
Okay. Shout out to her watching the podcast, I'm sure. But like, I thought about that and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is such a really key statement of there is a window that we have.
Right.
It's not big.
Right.
But it can get bigger. That's something I think she said, right? Like,
correct.
Was that the more you take care of yourself,
right,
the more you rest, the more tolerance you have.
Absolutely.
And it is in those small little like creases is when I realized like, oh, that's just a crack of tolerance. It's not even a window. Like, that's when things get bad. The Bible talks a lot about rest. Jesus would rest. He would sneak away, to be by himself, be with his Father. Talked about Sabbath, like, do you feel like this is like I want real Lisa here. Do you feel like you as a mom have figured out ways to have proper Sabbath?
I think, Matt, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I feel so grateful. I was able to have a beautiful experience of going through some sacred rhythms and going on retreats and actually learning more about Sabbath and experiencing what God intended it to be, which I feel like blew my mind from what I thought Sabbath was, and realized so much beauty in it and how he desires for us to have like a day to delight and to rest and to like restore our souls, and which again seems so different from like our culture, right? It's like Sundays, it's like, okay, get everybody to church. I mean, you see so much on like social media. It's like, this is a day to prep all of our food. This is a day to like go get groceries. This is like birthday parties. There's 1,000 things we're invited to. It's like, okay, that it tries to like compete for what I feel like God has like truly designed us for. And I think I read it was, it's like we were not like created for Sabbath, the Sabbath was created for us. And when you think of that, I'm like, wow, what like a good, kind Father.
Yeah.
So I think we can look at it as like, also as a busy parent, like, oh, Sabbath, like I should do that, or, oh, that's a great idea. But really like seeing God's heart in it, I think changes it. But I feel like the hardest thing, if I'm honest, is in order to have, I think, like a beautiful Sabbath, you really do have to prepare for it. Like we just talked, like chaos. I mean, that's just like, I feel like the natural order of the world. Like if we're not like tending to things or on top of things, things go to chaos. I look at my house, I'm like, oh my word, it's so picked up. Next thing you know, I'm like, what happened? It was 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
I just cooked, cleaned the kitchen. Now we're all back in there. It's like this never ending process. And so I think one of the challenges which is what I feel like I'm still working on too, is like preparing for that day. And I think when we prepare for it, then it is a true delight, and looking at it through like that lens instead of like I should, or oh guys, let's try to do a Sabbath today. It's like that's not like the heart behind it. So I don't want to like miss the heart behind it, but it also does, I feel like, take some planning.
Yeah, the planning piece is something I've been challenged with. I went on sabbatical last fall, and if you're listening, you don't know what sabbatical is. It's a extended time away. I'd been at ECU for 6 years, been in ministry for 20 plus, and they're like, I think it's a good time for you to have some time to rest. Going into that, though, I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
I remember meeting with a counselor, and he's like, how do you Sabbath? I'm like, well, I don't.
Right.
Right. And he's like, well, you need to work on that. It's like, well, thank you very much. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, but the thing he said is if you're not just planning for it, you're planning throughout the week.
Right.
Like if you know your Sabbath's going to be on Saturday, everything should be leading up to that, where it's like, okay, I want to make sure I have everything done. I'm not having to worry about laundry. I'm not having to worry about this and that and the other. And actually like being a part of something of rest that isn't interrupted by the things of normal,
right?
You know, or chaos, as you said.
Right.
So if you're a parent listening today, if you're like, oh, I don't have time for Sabbath, it's really easy like to just toss it away. When you said like God gives us that,
right?
And we disregard it so often,
right?
But trying to then just say, okay, how do I schedule this in? I said to Anne, I was like, we should schedule a Sabbath from phones, like you know, on Sundays. I was like, Lisa, it was going to be great. It was like 1 to 2:30. We get home at 1, from 1 to 2:30, no phones.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Got this.
It hasn't happened once. Talked about that in October. It was great. So not happened because we haven't been intentional.
Right.
So you say like you're still learning about this. Like, what do you think intentionality looks like with that when it comes to Jeff, when it comes to your kid? That's her husband, everybody. Good friend, great dude. When it comes to like talking with Jeff about it, talking with the kids about it and saying, how do we do this together where it's not just me, but it's us? You know?
Yeah, I think he would definitely be on board. I think I like to go and I like to have a full schedule. So for me, when that's why I think I'm going back to like, what is God's heart? Because otherwise I'm like, wait, this kind of sounds boring. And I don't know if I'm really like signing up for this, but realizing that it's a gift. So again, I think it's like the lens that we kind of like view it through. And actually that's a great suggestion. I should get my kids more on board. Like, how can we prepare for this? I think sometimes, sorry, my headphones just fell off. I think sometimes I don't know, I'm not involving the kids. Maybe I don't realize like, they're old enough now that really I should like bring them into the conversations about this instead of me being like planning it all ahead or kind of taking that all on myself. So that's actually a great suggestion.
Well,
thanks for planting that seed, Matt.
I'm glad it was a suggestion, but it hasn't been something that we've like, we haven't been intentional with putting that into place.
Right. You know? I feel like we've had like moments or even, so when I was on retreat, we talked about like almost like having a Shabbat, like, you know, like in the Jewish culture, like they start the night before. And so that, you know, again, like looking at it through like the lens of like beauty, like that can be like a great meal that you like really enjoy as a family. Something that we did a lot on the retreats was like, we would light candles and it just made it feel more like sacred and fun and set apart. I also like, though, it doesn't have to be this isolated activity. Like maybe you're bringing another family into it and just being intentional with that. And then like the next day, like maybe going into your day like slow, if that would be like restorative to you. Or I think some things that we like to do as a family are like go for bike rides when the weather's nice, you know, get ice cream at Uptown, or even like, I think a nice way to look at it too is like, let's save something fun for that day. One time I heard, it was on another podcast, but they were like, oh, let's save that for Sabbath. That sounds like a great idea. And so like getting your kids like excited about that, like, oh, we're going to like go for ice cream, but let's like save it for that day, 'cause that will be so much fun. So again, I think it's the language that we use and like the heart posture and kind of like setting those new expectations. And I think a missing link, Matt, is community. Like not being the only family trying to implement this, you know? So maybe in our small group, we should be like, okay, guys, how are we like doing this together and bringing those ideas, but also like seeing it from more of like a community aspect and not just our family trying to figure this out.
Yeah. No, I like that, because if we would try without bringing them on, it would look like a discipline, or like another task to accomplish. And you talk about the heart, like God's heart for this. It's not supposed to be angry or forceful or should. Yeah. And I think sometimes, like for me as a dad, I want to just push something onto my kids or onto my family and say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Right.
You know, and that's usually when those things don't work out, you
Right.
know, especially of the spiritual, you know, because
Mhm.
they can easily, they're of the age where they can choose to totally like, you know,
Right.
forget that, you know, it's just dad being dad.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. So practically, like, as we look at this, like what can we say today to just a parent who's struggling with the schedule, you know, struggling with the
Right.
life? Like, what can we say today to just be like, hey, 2025's here? Like,
Right.
I would say, like, if I can encourage any parent today, it would be like, yeah, but let's bring everybody in.
I think that you're right. Maybe just share with your family, like, hey guys, we're thinking about taking this new direction. We would love like your input. We know that God wants to use this as a day of like things that we delight in, things that are restorative to us and rest, and getting your kids like involved in it. I know even my kids, like they love to like draw, like that something like Owen, my junior hire. I was asking him like, Owen, what do you think you like to do? Like what's restorative and restful? And he's like, I love to draw. Like he's such a typical like middle schooler. He's like drawing shoes, and he just learned about the Apple Pen. So he's like really into like drawing and then all the technology that comes with that, that I don't even know all the things you can do with this, but he was so into it. And I just think like also the beauty of like creativity and just enjoying things, whatever that like looks like, instead of just like, okay, again, like checking boxes or tasks. So I think I would try to encourage parents as well as like, what can you do to really just free yourself up? You know, whether it's like making an extra meal during the week so that you have something prepared for that day, or maybe like we're going out to eat. I've even heard families say like, we just have a huge charcuterie board.
Okay.
Which I'm like all about charcuterie. So I'm like, that makes sense though. And like the kids, and so then it's not all this like work and like dishes and all those things. I'm like, that's so fun. Or like another thing we've done is like, let's just have like a big skillet cookie and just sit around the table and or play games. So I think we have to maybe like not overcomplicate it. And don't make it look like this is the day. It's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. And so instead, maybe just saying like, what can we do to free ourselves up? We really want to enjoy each other. What are things that we enjoy as a family? And maybe just like little ways, and hopefully like habit stack, like those things will build.
Yeah. The
and
little
you're like,
things
that is fun. Like, let's do that again next week.
The little things is important, right? Like, you talk about lighting candles. One of the things over sabbatical that I started doing, I get up 5 a.m. because it is my rest time. Like that sounds weird because you think like resting would be more sleep. But it's the only time in the day that the house is quiet. So I usually get up, but I started listening to this podcast by a guy named Steve Cuss. And at the beginning of every podcast, he lights a candle and he says, this is a reminder that God's presence is with us. It's a light. And so every morning I'll light a candle.
Yeah.
It's right there in front of me, you know, and like having those things that cause and bring you talk about habit stacking.
Yeah.
If you start like little habits during the week, then that Sabbath time or that one day or that even that 4 hours maybe period that you create for your family is a lot easier for you. So as the driver. So, well, this is good. I don't know, like, I think that if we can be people that rest, then parents that rest, we're teaching our kids that life doesn't have to be chaotic. You talk about Owen, like we don't want him to think life has to be chaotic, you know, my kids. So parents, if we can encourage you, you know, try to take moments of rest. Try to take times where things in your life don't seem chaotic, don't respond in ways that are chaos, because you have built up enough time of rest and peace in your life to move forward. So, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is great. This is fun.
fun.
And once again, you know, shout out to Evolution Pre and Probiotics. If you want to look them up online, I'm sure they're on there. So only 5 grams of sugar, real squeezed fruit. And
gotta show up with our best selves, Matt. I mean, it's more than just rest. It's a whole thing.
It is a thing. It is a thing. So, hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching today. If you don't have a church home, we're in Normal. We're in Bloomington, Eastview Christian Church. Look us up. If you're not from around here, make sure to find a local community of faith for you and your family. And, hey, you're doing great. Keep going. Parenting junior hires is hard. but you're doing great. So keep at it and just know that. So, all right. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks so much for having
All
me.
right.